He abandoned her. In labor. He refused to pay her hospital bills. He thought she was powerless. But what he didn't know was that she wasn't helpless. She was a secret billionaire who had just bought the hospital, and she was about to take everything he thought he owned. Stay till the end, subscribe to this channel, and watch as one woman's fight for justice will topple the men and women who dared to underestimate her. The scream tore out of her before she could stop it. "Greg, please, something's wrong." The hospital corridor smelled like antiseptic and panic. Ava Walter doubled over, one hand gripping the wall, the other clutching her swollen belly as another contraction slammed into her spine. Her gown was damp. Her water had broken 10 minutes ago in the car. She was not supposed to be standing here. She was supposed to be in a bed. Greg didn't rush toward her. He stood 6 feet away, checking his watch, his face tight with irritation. Not fear, not concern. Beside him, a woman in pale blue scrubs leaned against the nurse's station, arms folded, lips pressed into a thin, knowing smile. "Lower your voice," Greg said sharply. "You're making a scene." Ava stared at him, breath hitching. "I'm in labor." "I know." He exhaled as she just told him the weather. "And I already told admissions, I'm not authorizing anything expensive." The words didn't register at first. They slid past her ears like static. I don't understand." The woman in scrubs finally spoke, her tone light. "Sir, the billing department does need confirmation. Labor and delivery isn't." "I said no," Greg snapped, cutting her off. "I'm not paying tens of thousands of dollars because she can't handle pain." Ava's knees buckled. A nurse rushed forward, catching her elbow. "Ma'am, let's get you seated." "No," Greg held up a hand. "If she wants a private room, an epidural, all that luxury nonsense, she can figure it out herself." Ava looked up at him, eyes wide. "Greg, this is your child." He laughed. A short, humorless sound. "Let's not dramatize. Plenty of women give birth without bankrupting their husbands." The woman in scrubs, Jessica, the name tag read, tilted her head, studying Ava like a problem she'd already solved. "Sir," Jessica said softly, "we do have charity intake forms. If she qualifies." Ava's chest tightened. Charity. She'd married this man 5 years ago. Loved him. Trusted him. Believed every promise whispered in the dark. Another contraction hit. Harder this time. She cried out, fingers digging into the nurse's sleeve. "Greg, please," she whispered. "I'm scared." That did it. Something cold flickered across his face. Embarrassment. Annoyance. "God, Ava, you always do this," he said. "Make everything about you." The nurse helping her stiffened. "Sir, that's enough. Your wife needs immediate." "She's not my responsibility anymore." The sentence landed like a gunshot. The hallway went quiet. Even the beeping monitors from behind closed doors seemed to pause. Ava's vision blurred. What did you say?" Greg didn't repeat himself. He turned instead to Jessica. "Are you ready?" he asked. Jessica straightened, smoothing her scrubs. "I'm done with my shift." She reached for his hand. And he let her. The sight cracked something inside Ava's chest. "You're leaving," Ava whispered. "You're leaving me here?" Greg finally met her eyes. There was no guilt there. Just finality. "I've done my part," he said. "I'm not throwing my life away because you decided to have this baby." The nurse supporting Ava gasped. "Sir." Jessica squeezed Greg's hand. "You don't need to explain yourself." Ava watched them. The way Jessica leaned into him. The familiarity. The ease. It wasn't new. The realization burned hotter than the contractions. "You've been seeing her," Ava said hoarsely. Jessica's lips curved. Not denying it. Not apologizing. Greg scoffed. "Don't start." "How long?" Ava asked. He hesitated. then shrugged. 6 months. Maybe longer. Hard to remember. The floor felt like it was tilting. 6 months. She was 6 months pregnant when he started sleeping with the nurse now standing in front of her, judging her worth by the hospital bill she hadn't even seen yet. Another wave of pain crashed through her, stealing her breath. The nurse helped her sit in a wheelchair, hands shaking. Ava looked up one last time. "If you walk away," she said, voice trembling but clear, "don't come back." Greg rolled his eyes. "You don't get to make demands." He leaned down, close enough that only she could hear him. "You're not worth this," he said quietly. "Not the money. Not the stress. Not anymore." Then he straightened, slipped his arm around Jessica's waist, and walked toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed down the corridor. Ava watched until the doors closed behind them. Something inside her went silent. The nurse knelt in front of her. "Ma'am, do you have anyone we can call?" Ava swallowed. Her throat burned. "No," she said. "I don't." Another nurse approached, her expression tight. "Billing says without authorization." Ava raised a hand. "It's fine," she whispered. "I'll handle it." The words surprised even her. As they wheeled her toward triage, tears slid silently down her temples. Not loud. Not messy. Just falling. If you've ever been abandoned when you needed someone the most, if you've ever watched the person you trusted turn away, stay with this story. And if that pain feels familiar, subscribe. You're not alone here. They moved her into a curtained bay. The lights were harsh. The room is cold. Ava stared at the ceiling, breathing through another contraction. She thought about the years she'd clipped coupons. The second-hand car she drove. The teaching job she'd kept even when she didn't need the money. She thought about the lies Greg had believed. About how easy it had been for him to underestimate her. Her phone buzzed in her hand. One message. Unknown number. "Are we proceeding?" Ava closed her eyes. For the first time since the pain started, she smiled. "Yes," she typed. "Proceed." Outside the room, the nurses whispered about the man who'd walked away from his pregnant wife. None of them knew what he'd just done. And none of them knew that before this night was over, Greg Walter would learn exactly how expensive that decision was. The next contraction hit. Ava didn't scream this time. She breathed. And waited. The pain came in waves that no breathing technique could soften. Ava clenched the thin hospital sheet, knuckles white, as another contraction tore through her body. The monitor beside her chirped in erratic spikes, tracking a heartbeat that was strong, stubborn, fighting to arrive in a world that had already rejected it. "Stay with me, Ava," the nurse said, voice calm but urgent. Her badge read Linda. "You're doing great. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you are." Ava nodded, though tears blurred her vision. Great didn't feel like the right word. Alone did. The curtain rustled as someone stepped inside. "Insurance still hasn't cleared," a younger nurse whispered to Linda, glancing at the doorway like she expected Greg to suddenly reappear. "Without authorization, administration says we have to move her to general intake." Ava turned her head slowly. "Move me, where?" Linda's jaw tightened. "They want to transfer you to the shared ward until payment is confirmed." Ava laughed, a broken, hollow sound that startled even her. "I'm in active labor." "I know," Linda said quietly. "I'm sorry." They began to wheel her down the hallway. The ceiling lights blurred into long white streaks as another contraction seized her. She cried out this time, unable to stop it, her voice echoing against sterile walls that offered no comfort. Patients stared. A man in a suit looked away awkwardly. A woman waiting with her husband whispered something under her breath. Humiliation burned hotter than the pain. They parked her near the nurses' station, a temporary holding area separated by nothing more than a flimsy curtain. Conversations drifted in freely. Laughter, phones ringing, the ordinary sounds of life continuing while hers felt like it was falling apart. Ava pressed a hand to her belly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I tried. Another voice cut through the noise. Well. Still here. Ava stiffened. She knew that voice. She turned her head and saw Evelyn Walter, Greg's mother, standing at the foot of the bed, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed, pearl necklace resting against her tailored coat like a badge of superiority. Greg's mother surveyed the scene with thinly veiled disgust. No private room? Evelyn asked, clicking her tongue. How unfortunate. I always said you lacked foresight. Ava swallowed hard. What are you doing here? Evelyn smiled. Greg called. He said you were making things difficult. Linda stepped forward. Ma'am, you can't be here. I'm family, Evelyn snapped. Unlike some people. She leaned closer to Ava, lowering her voice. Honestly, Ava, I don't blame my son. 5 years married and you still can't contribute anything meaningful. A teacher's salary, thrift store clothes. Did you really think that would hold a man? Ava's vision swam. I loved him. Evelyn scoffed. Love doesn't pay hospital bills. Another contraction hit. Ava gasped, arching off the bed. Linda moved quickly, adjusting the monitor, but Evelyn didn't flinch. She watched with clinical detachment. If you had any dignity, Evelyn continued, you'd spare Greg this embarrassment. He has a future to think about. Ava grabbed the side rail, her voice shaking. You raised him to do this? Evelyn's eyes hardened. I raised him to choose wisely. And he finally has. The words sliced deeper than any scalpel. Linda stepped between them. That's enough. You need to leave. Evelyn straightened, smoothing her coat. Of course. I've said my piece. She paused at the curtain, glancing back. Don't expect my son to rescue you. Some mistakes can't be undone. When she left, the air felt thinner. Ava stared at the space, her chest heaving. Linda squeezed her hand. I'm so sorry, she said. No one deserves this. Ava nodded slowly. If you're watching this and you've ever been blamed for someone else's cruelty, if you've ever been told you weren't enough when you were already breaking, don't look away. And if you believe people like Greg shouldn't get to walk away untouched, subscribe. This isn't over. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Documents are ready. Awaiting your confirmation. Ava's fingers trembled as she typed. Not yet. Wait for my signal. Minutes passed. Hours blurred. The pain intensified, relentless, but something else grew alongside it. Clarity. A commotion erupted near the entrance. I need to see my wife, Greg's voice barked. Ava's heart skipped. Linda looked toward the sound, then back at Ava. Do you want me to? No, Ava said softly. Let him come. The curtain pulled back. Greg stood there, disheveled, jaw tight, eyes scanning the room like he was inconvenienced rather than terrified. What is this? He demanded. Why are you in here? Ava met his gaze, steady despite the storm raging inside her. You didn't authorize anything. He scoffed. Don't start. I had meetings. Jessica got fired, Linda said quietly from behind him. Greg froze. What? Security escorted her out, Linda continued. Administration's orders. His face drained of color. That's impossible. Ava watched him carefully. The first crack. Did you do this? He snapped at her. She didn't answer. His phone buzzed. Then again. And again. He glanced down, reading messages, his breathing quickening. What the hell is going on? He whispered. Ava leaned back against the pillow, another contraction building, her voice calm. You should probably sit down, she said. Greg looked at her, really looked this time, and for the first time that night, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Outside, footsteps approached. Measured, deliberate. A woman's voice followed. Mrs. Walter, it said. I'm here on behalf of Sinclair Holdings. Greg turned just as the curtain swept open. and whatever power he thought he had began to slip through his fingers. Greg took a step back as if the air itself had shifted. The woman who entered didn't look like hospital staff. She wore a tailored charcoal suit, tablet tucked under her arm, posture sharp, eyes calm and assessing. She didn't glance at Greg first. Her attention went straight to the woman in the bed. "Mrs. Walter," she said evenly. "I'm Claire Whitman. I apologize for the delay." Greg scoffed, forcing a laugh that didn't land. "Who are you? What is this? Why was he swallowed, correcting himself. Why was the nurse fired?" Claire finally looked at him. Just once. It was enough to silence him. "Sir," she said, "this conversation isn't about you." Ava exhaled slowly through another contraction. Sweat beaded at her hairline, but her eyes never left Greg. "You came back," she said. He bristled. "Don't flatter yourself. I got calls. Someone's messing with hospital operations, and my name keeps coming up." Claire raised an eyebrow. "That's because your behavior triggered an internal review." "Internal review?" he snapped. "Based on what?" "Her feelings." "Based on documented misconduct," Claire replied, "including abandonment of a patient in active labor, public refusal of care authorization, and an inappropriate personal relationship with on-duty staff." Greg laughed again, louder this time. "Defensive. This is ridiculous. You can't just ruin someone's career because of marital drama." Ava shifted, wincing, then looked at him. "You ruined it yourself." He turned on her. "You think you're clever? Playing victim? You've always loved the attention." Linda stepped closer to the bed, jaw tight. Claire didn't interrupt. She was watching, letting him dig. Greg gestured around the cramped bay. "Look at this. This is where you belong. And now you're trying to punish me because I finally chose better." The word better echoed. Ava closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them, something in her expression had changed. Not anger, not grief. Acceptance. "If you've ever been discarded the moment you stopped being useful," she said quietly, "stay with me. And if you've ever watched someone justify cruelty like it's logic, subscribe. People like this depend on silence." Greg stared at her. "Who are you talking to?" Claire stepped forward. "Mrs. Walter, if you're ready, I can explain the next steps." Greg barked out a laugh. "Next steps? You're acting like she has leverage." Ava nodded slightly. "She does." His smile faltered. Claire tapped her tablet. 18 months ago, Ava Walter became the sole trustee of a private holding entity following the death of her maternal grandfather. Greg frowned. "What?" "The entity controls multiple investment arms," Claire continued, voice steady, "including real estate, private equity, and healthcare partnerships." Ava's breathing steadied despite the pain. She focused on the sound of Claire's voice, grounding herself. Greg shook his head. "This is insane. Ava's a teacher. She drives a 10-year-old car." "That was a choice," Ava said. He looked at her sharply. "What are you talking about?" Another contraction hit. She gripped the rails, breathed through it, then continued. "I wanted to know who you were when money wasn't part of the equation," she said. "I wanted to know if you'd stay when life got inconvenient." Greg's mouth opened, closed. "You lied to me," he demanded. Ava smiled faintly. "You cheated on me." Claire glanced at Linda. "We'll need to move Mrs. Walter to a private delivery room immediately." Greg stepped forward. "You don't get to make that call." Claire didn't look at him. "Actually, I do." Two orderlies appeared as if summoned by the words. Linda blinked. "Room 12 is open." "Prepare it," Claire said. "Full care. No restrictions." Greg's face reddened. "You can't just override billing." Claire finally turned to him fully. "This facility is in the final stages of acquisition," she said. And your wife is the incoming principal. The word incoming hung heavy. Greg laughed, but there was panic in it now. No, that's not. Ava met his eyes. I told you not to come back. His phone buzzed again. He looked down, hands shaking. A notification preview flashed across the screen. Jessica Porter. Termination effective immediately. Greg's breath hitched. You did this, he whispered. Ava didn't deny it. Outside the curtain, voices rose. Administration scrambling, security radios crackling. Something was happening. Fast. Evelyn's shrill voice pierced the noise. Where is my son? She pushed past the curtain, fury etched into every line of her face, then froze when she saw Claire. What is she doing here? Evelyn snapped. Claire nodded politely. Mrs. Walter. We've met. Evelyn stiffened. You're that lawyer. Advisor, Claire corrected. And today, I'm acting on behalf of your daughter-in-law. Evelyn laughed sharply. Don't insult me. This woman doesn't own anything. Ava turned her head slowly. You should sit down. Evelyn scoffed. Why would I? Because, Ava said evenly, your mortgage is held by one of my companies. Silence. Greg stared at his mother. Evelyn's lips parted. That's impossible, Evelyn whispered. Claire tapped her tablet again. The loan was transferred last year. Notices were sent. Evelyn swayed. Greg. He didn't answer. He was staring at Ava like she'd become someone else entirely. A nurse poked her head in. Mrs. Walter, we're ready. Ava nodded. As they began to move her bed, Greg reached out instinctively. Ava, wait. We need to talk. She looked at his hand. Then at his face. There's nothing left to say. If you've ever begged someone to stay and watched them walk away, remember this moment. And if you believe betrayal should have consequences, subscribe. Justice doesn't always scream. Sometimes it arrives quietly. They rolled her past him. Past Evelyn, who was shaking now. Past the nurses who watched with wide eyes. As the doors to the private delivery suite closed behind her, Ava felt the weight of the past 5 years finally lift. But outside that room, Greg stood frozen. And the worst part hadn't even begun. Because his phone buzzed again. This time, it was from his bank. Account access restricted. Please contact your administrator. Greg's knees buckled. And somewhere down the hall, Ava breathed through another contraction, unaware that by the time her child took its first breath, the man who abandoned her would lose far more than he ever imagined. The doors slid shut with a soft hiss, sealing Ava inside a room that felt like a different world. The lighting was warmer here. The bed was wider. Monitors hummed quietly instead of shrieking. For the first time since arriving at the hospital, no one was rushing her, questioning her worth, or asking who would pay. Linda adjusted the 4 and met Ava's eyes. You're safe now. Ava nodded, though her hands still trembled. Another contraction tightened low in her abdomen, deep and consuming. She breathed through it, slow and deliberate. Claire stood near the window, already on the phone. Her voice was calm, efficient. Yes. Activate Clause 17. Full operational authority. Effective immediately. No, I don't want delays. Public announcement can wait. She ended the call and turned back to Ava. Security has been instructed not to allow Mr. Walter or his mother anywhere near this floor. Ava swallowed. Thank you. Claire inclined her head. You don't need to thank me. You endured more than enough. Outside the room, raised voices echoed faintly. Greg. Evelyn. Anger mixed with fear. Ava closed her eyes for a second. 5 years. 5 years of shrinking herself, convincing herself that love meant patience, that loyalty meant silence. Another wave of pain hit. She gasped, gripping the bed rails. Ava, Linda said gently, you're progressing fast. A knock sounded. Before anyone could answer, the door opened. Greg pushed inside. What the hell is going on? He demanded, eyes wild. They're saying I'm not allowed. Security appeared behind him immediately. 2 guards, firm but controlled. Sir, you need to step back, one said. Greg spun on them. This is my wife. My child. Ava laughed softly. It surprised her. Now you remember, she said. He turned to her, desperation cracking through his anger. Ava, listen to me. Whatever this is, this power play, it's gone too far. She met his gaze steadily. You walked away from me while I was in labor. That's not fair, he snapped. You know how stressed I've been. The bills, the pressure. And the affair? She asked quietly. His mouth closed. Linda stepped closer to Ava's side, a protective presence. If you've ever watched someone rewrite history to excuse hurting you, Ava said, voice calm but cutting, don't look away. And if you believe accountability matters, subscribe. People like this rely on being believed. Greg ran a hand through his hair. I made a mistake. No, Ava said. You made a choice. Claire crossed the room and faced him. Mr. Walter, your access privileges have been suspended. You can't do this, he said hoarsely. I'm her husband. Claire didn't blink. Legally, that may not remain true for long. Greg's phone buzzed again. He looked down, face paling. Stop doing this, he whispered, eyes darting between Ava and Claire. I can fix this. Ava shook her head slowly. You already decided who I was worth being to. Another contraction ripped through her. She cried out this time, unable to hold it back. Linda and another nurse moved quickly, checking monitors. Ava, Linda said, urgency rising. We're close. Greg took a step forward instinctively. Let me stay. Please. Security blocked him. Evelyn's voice screamed from the hallway. Greg. Don't let them push you around. Ava turned her head slightly toward the door. Tell your mother, she said through clenched teeth, that cruelty has interest. Claire's phone rang. She answered, listening for a moment, then looked at Ava. The acquisition is complete, she said quietly. Effective immediately. Greg stared. What acquisition? Ava exhaled, a long, steady breath. This hospital. The words landed hard. Greg laughed weakly. That's not funny. It's not a joke, Claire said. Sinclair Medical Holdings now owns this facility. Evelyn burst into the room, face flushed. You can't be serious. Ava met her eyes. I am. Evelyn shook her head violently. You think money makes you powerful? Ava smiled faintly. No. It just removes obstacles. Evelyn lunged forward. Security restrained her instantly. Get her out, Claire said. As Evelyn was dragged away, her voice echoed down the hall, shrill and panicked. You'll regret this. Ava closed her eyes. Another contraction surged, stronger, closer. Linda squeezed her hand. It's time. Greg stood frozen, watching the door, his world unraveling in real time. Ava opened her eyes and looked at him one last time. This, she said softly, is the last thing you'll ever take from me. The door shut. Outside, Greg's phone rang again. He answered without thinking. What do you mean my accounts are frozen? He demanded. Inside the room, Ava cried out, not in fear, but in effort. And somewhere between pain and power, everything began to change. The room was filled with movement. Gloved hands, calm voices, instruments laid out with practiced precision. Linda leaned close, her voice anchoring Ava as another contraction tore through her. Push with it, she said. You're doing this. Ava nodded, teeth clenched, every muscle burning. Pain blurred the edges of the world, but something else cut through it. Clarity. This was hers. This moment. This child. No one could abandon her here. She pushed again, a guttural cry breaking free despite her effort to stay composed. "You're almost there," someone said. Ava felt it then. The shift, the pressure changing, the promise of release. Tears slid into her hairline, not from fear now, but from something fierce and overwhelming. Outside the door, voices rose. "You can't keep me out," Greg shouted. "That's my child." A security guard answered, firm. "Sir, step back." Ava heard it distantly, like noise from another life. If you've ever had someone claim ownership only when it benefited them, only when the damage was already done, remember this. And if you're tired of watching people like that escape consequences, subscribe. This story doesn't protect cowards. "Ava," Linda said. "One more. Give me everything." She did. The cry that followed wasn't hers. It was small, sharp, alive. The sound cracked something open in her chest. "Oh," Ava breathed. "Oh my God." Linda lifted the baby gently, turning her so Ava could see. Dark hair plastered to her tiny head, fists clenched, face scrunched in protest at the suddenness of the world. "You have a daughter," Linda said, smiling through tears. Ava sobbed openly now, relief and awe crashing together. "Hi," she whispered. "I'm here." They placed the baby on her chest. The warmth, the weight, the heartbeat fluttering against her skin. For a moment, everything else disappeared. Then the door opened again. Claire stepped inside, tablet replaced with a slim leather folder. She paused just inside the room, taking in the scene, her expression softening. "She's beautiful," she said quietly. Ava nodded, unable to speak. Claire waited until Linda finished her checks, then moved closer, lowering her voice. "I won't keep this long." She opened the folder, revealing documents already signed, stamped, and flagged with colored tabs. "The transfer is finalized," Claire said. "The board ratified it unanimously. Sinclair Medical Holdings now has full ownership. Effective immediately." Ava stroked her daughter's back, grounding herself in the truth of her. "And?" she asked. "And," Claire continued, "an executive directive has been issued. All staff involved in ethical violations have been terminated pending review." Ava's eyes lifted. "Jessica." "Yes." A flicker of something crossed Ava's face. Not triumph. Not pity. Finality. "Her license?" Ava asked. "Under investigation," Claire said. "The hospital filed a formal complaint." Ava closed her eyes briefly. She hadn't asked for revenge. She'd asked for accountability. Outside, chaos erupted. "What do you mean she's fired?" Greg's voice cracked, panic now outweighing anger. "You can't just, she didn't do anything." Another voice answered, clipped and professional. "Sir, step away from the desk." "Ava," he shouted. "You can't do this to her." Ava looked down at her daughter. "You hear that?" she whispered. "That's the sound of someone who only cares when it costs him." Claire's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then back at Ava. "Your mother-in-law's mortgage," she said. "The 30-day notice has been issued." Ava didn't flinch. "She mocked me while I was in labor," Ava said softly. "She told me I wasn't enough." Claire nodded. "The terms are legal. Humane. But firm." "Good," Ava said. Another knock at the door. A hospital administrator entered, nervous, smoothing his tie. "Mrs. Walter, Ms. Sinclair, congratulations. We've prepared a statement for the morning. Ownership disclosure, leadership transition." "Tomorrow," Ava said gently. "Tonight, I'm just a mother." The administrator nodded quickly and retreated. Linda adjusted the blankets, smiling down at the baby. "What's her name?" Ava looked at her daughter's tiny face, her heart swelling with something stronger than pain, stronger than fear. "Grace," she said. "Sophie Grace." The name settled into the room like a promise. Outside, Greg's voice rose again, ragged now. I need to see her. Just 5 minutes. No, Claire said firmly from the doorway. Visitation is denied. What? He choked. You can't keep my child from me. You did that yourself, Ava said, not raising her voice. Silence followed. Heavy. Final. If you've ever watched someone beg only after they broke you, if you've ever seen regret show up too late, stay with this story. And if you believe that love shouldn't require suffering to be proven, subscribe. Some lessons only land when the door stays closed. Ava kissed Sophie Grace's forehead, breathing her in. Claire lingered a moment longer. There's one more thing. Ava looked up. Your husband's employment, Claire said. His firm called. There. Reconsidering his position. Ava's eyes narrowed slightly. Because of me? Because of public optics, Claire replied. And a pending ethics inquiry. Ava nodded once. I don't want special favors. Claire smiled faintly. You didn't ask for any. The lights dimmed. The room quieted. Linda stepped back, giving Ava space. Outside, Greg slumped into a chair, head in his hands, phone buzzing endlessly with notifications he couldn't fix, calls he couldn't undo. Inside, Ava held her daughter and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. But even as Sophie Grace slept against her chest, Ava knew the storm wasn't over. Because the man who abandoned her had just lost everything he thought defined him. And tomorrow he would come back begging, not for love, but for mercy. Morning crept in quietly, the kind of calm that only exists before consequences fully arrive. Ava woke to the soft weight of Sophie Grace against her chest, warm and real, her tiny breaths steady. For a moment, the hospital room felt suspended outside of time. No shouting, no accusations, no pain sharp enough to steal breath. Then the door opened. Evelyn Walter walked in as if she still owned the place. Her hair was perfectly styled, makeup flawless, coat draped over her arm like she was arriving at a luncheon instead of the maternity ward she'd been barred from hours earlier. 2 security guards hovered just outside, tense but silent. Ava didn't move. Evelyn took in the room with narrowed eyes. The private suite, the fresh flowers, the quiet authority in the air. Her gaze landed on the baby. So, she said coolly. You named her without consulting the family. Ava looked down at Sophie Grace, then back up. There is no family to consult. Evelyn's lips tightened. Don't be dramatic. This child is a Walter. No, Ava said evenly. She isn't. Evelyn laughed sharply. You think money rewrites blood? Ava shifted slightly, protective instinct flaring. I think character defines legacy. Evelyn stepped closer. You've humiliated my son. You've destroyed his reputation. And now you want to erase him. Ava held her gaze. He erased himself. Evelyn's composure cracked for just a second. Greg made mistakes. Men do. You don't burn down a life over that. Ava's voice stayed calm. He abandoned me while I was in labor. Evelyn waved a dismissive hand. Because you pushed him. You always pushed. Playing small, hiding things. I hid nothing that mattered, Ava said. Evelyn leaned in, voice low and venomous. You trapped him with this baby. The room went still. If you've ever been blamed for someone else's betrayal, if you've ever been told their cruelty was your fault, stay with this. And if you're tired of women being punished for men's choices, subscribe. Silence is how people like her survive. Ava didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. You're done here, she said. Evelyn scoffed. You don't get to decide that. The door opened again. Claire stepped in, expression unreadable, followed by a hospital administrator and one of the guards. Actually, Claire said calmly, she does. Evelyn spun. I wasn't finished. Claire held out a document. You are trespassing on private property. Evelyn's eyes flicked to the header. Her color drained. This is a maternity ward, Evelyn snapped. You can't. It's privately owned, Claire said. As of yesterday. Ava watched the realization sink in. The woman who had always looked down on her was finally seeing the ground disappear beneath her feet. You think this gives you power over me? Evelyn hissed. Ava met her stare. No. Your choices did. Claire nodded to the guard. Escort Mrs. Walter out. Evelyn jerked back. Greg will hear about this. He already has, Claire said. Evelyn's laugh was brittle. He'll fix it. Claire didn't smile. Your son no longer has access to any shared accounts. His credit cards were suspended at dawn. Evelyn froze. What? Ava felt a quiet shift inside her. Not joy, not cruelty. Resolution. You raised him to believe consequences were optional, Ava said. You were wrong. Evelyn's face twisted with rage. You think you've won? Ava looked down at Sophie Grace, who stirred softly, then back up. This isn't a game. The guards moved in. Evelyn pulled free once, glaring. This child will grow up knowing what you did, she spat. Ava nodded. Yes. She will. Evelyn was escorted out, her heels clicking sharply until the sound vanished down the hall. The room exhaled. Claire turned to Ava. There's more. Ava adjusted Sophie Grace gently. I expected that. Claire handed her the folder. Your husband's firm terminated his contract this morning. They cited reputational risk. Ava closed her eyes briefly. And? She asked. He's downstairs, Claire continued, demanding to see you. He's not handling it well. As if summoned, Greg's voice echoed faintly from the corridor, raw and hoarse. I just want to talk to her. Ava's jaw tightened. Linda stepped closer. Do you want us to block him? Ava shook her head slowly. No. Claire studied her. Are you sure? Yes, Ava said. 5 minutes. Supervised. If you've ever been tempted to give someone access again just to hear what they'll say, remember this moment. And if you're learning that closure doesn't always mean reconciliation, subscribe. Strength looks quiet, not forgiving too soon. The door opened. Greg walked in looking like a stranger. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. His confidence, the thing he'd worn like armor, was gone. He stopped when he saw the baby. Oh, he whispered. She's beautiful. Ava didn't respond. Greg swallowed hard. Ava, please. I didn't know. If I had known who you were. She cut him off. That's the problem. He stepped closer, then stopped when the guard shifted. I was under pressure, he said quickly. My mom, my job, everything was piling up. Jessica didn't mean anything. Ava met his eyes. You left me to give birth alone. His voice broke. I came back. Too late, Ava said. He reached out, hands shaking. Let me hold her. No. Greg flinched. She's my daughter. You don't get to claim people when it's convenient, Ava said. That's not love. Tears slipped down his face. I'll do anything. Ava leaned back against the pillows, exhausted but unyielding. You already did. The guard stepped forward. Time's up. Greg looked at Ava, then at Sophie Grace, then back again. Please. Ava's voice softened, but only slightly. Leave. As he was escorted out, his shoulders slumped, the weight of everything pressing down at once. The door closed. Ava let out a long breath. Claire approached quietly. Divorce papers are ready when you are. Ava nodded. Soon. She looked down at her daughter, brushing a fingertip across Sophie Grace's cheek. Outside that room, a man was realizing that arrogance costs more than money. And somewhere deep inside Ava, a final decision settled into place, one that would change everything next. Because forgiveness was no longer on the table. And the reckoning hadn't even reached its peak yet. The hospital felt impossibly quiet after Greg had been escorted out, the echoes of his desperation lingering in the hall like a warning. Ava sat upright, cradling Sophie Grace, every tiny movement of the baby a reminder of what had almost been stolen from her. Her body ached, but the fire that had been smoldering inside for years now burned unchecked. She was done hiding, done shrinking, done being powerless. Linda adjusted the blanket around the baby. "I'll step out for a minute, but call me if you need anything." Ava nodded, eyes fixed on Sophie Grace. "Thank you for everything." No one else could help her now. No one had the right. Not Greg, not Evelyn, not Jessica. Her phone buzzed. Claire had left it on the side table. A single message illuminated the screen. All accounts frozen. Assets secured. Hospital acquisition finalized. Immediate termination of all violations executed. Awaiting your next instructions. Ava's lips curved slightly. That was the first time she allowed herself a breath that wasn't tied to pain. Not relief, power. She had been underestimated, dismissed, abandoned, but not anymore. A knock came at the door. She didn't move immediately. Then the door opened slightly, and Evelyn's voice, sharp and brittle, cut through the air. "Ava, this isn't over." Evelyn spat, stepping in before the guard could stop her. Ava didn't flinch. Sophie Grace stirred, tiny fists pumping instinctively. "You," Ava said softly, "thought you could humiliate me while I was at my most vulnerable." Evelyn's eyes flickered with something like fear, though she masked it quickly. Greg, he's my son. You can't do this to him." Ava's voice grew steady, calm, ice-hard. "I didn't do this to him. He did it to himself. And now, thanks to you, he's learning consequences." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Consequences? You think your money can fix everything?" Ava smiled faintly. "It isn't money that matters. It's choices." Outside, the hospital staff watched in tense silence. Word had spread fast. Ownership had changed hands. Every nurse, doctor, and administrator now knew that the woman they had dismissed was the one holding all the cards. Evelyn's face twisted in disbelief. This isn't legal." Ava's fingers tightened around the baby. "Everything is legal. All documented. All signed. All executed while you were too busy mocking someone you thought was weak." A sudden beep from the phone made them both turn. Another message from Claire. Foreclosure proceedings were initiated on Evelyn Walters' estate. Payment is due in 30 days, or the transfer is complete. Legal enforcement active. Evelyn's face drained of color. Her eyes darted between Ava, the baby, and the phone. "You can't." Ava's voice rose just slightly, but it carried through the room like a bell. "You should have treated me like a person. You didn't. Now you'll see what happens when cruelty meets accountability." If you've ever been belittled, humiliated, or left to fend for yourself while someone else profited from your patience, watch closely. And if you believe that people like Evelyn and Greg shouldn't get to escape consequences, subscribe. This isn't just a story. It's a lesson. Evelyn's face twisted further. "Greg, he'll ruin you." Ava tilted her head, eyes steady. "He already tried. And he failed." At that moment, the hospital intercom buzzed. "Attention all staff," a voice announced. "Effective immediately, all previous management directives are revoked. Sinclair Medical Holdings now has full administrative control. New protocols are in effect." Evelyn gasped audibly. "He can't. Greg can't." Ava held Sophie Grace close, voice soft but deadly. "Greg isn't in control. He hasn't been in control for a long time. And neither have you." Evelyn's knees wobbled. Claire stepped forward and placed a hand on the older woman's shoulder, firm but professional. "You have 30 days to settle your property. After that, Sinclair Financial will assume ownership." Evelyn's screams filled the hall. Guards moved her toward the door, but the sound of her panic echoed long after she was gone. Ava exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of years of fear, shame, and betrayal lift slightly. She had survived Greg's betrayal, Evelyn's cruelty, and Jessica's manipulations. But there was one last thing, one battle left that would define her future and her daughter's. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Claire. Greg Matthews has requested supervised visitation. Legal counsel recommends strict limits. Custody arrangements pending. He is agitated. Ava's lips pressed into a thin line. She looked down at Sophie Grace, tiny fingers curling around hers, and whispered, "You will never be left powerless." Outside the room, Greg fumed, calls unanswered, account alerts blinking, reputation crumbling. His panic grew with every passing minute. Ava felt a surge of determination unlike anything she had ever known. The pain, the betrayal, the abandonment, it had forged her into someone untouchable. And she wasn't done. Because by the time Sophie Grace opened her eyes to a world that should have taken her mother for granted, those who had tried to destroy them would understand the cost of their arrogance. And the first strike of that reckoning was already in motion. The afternoon sun filtered through the blinds, casting sharp lines across the pristine maternity suite. Ava sat in the leather chair by the window, Sophie Grace in her arms, small fingers curling around hers as if anchoring her to reality. Each breath was steady now, controlled, not pain-driven but deliberate, as if claiming ownership over every moment that had once been stolen from her. The calm was deceptive. Her phone buzzed. Claire's name flashed across the screen. Ava swiped to answer. "Mrs. Walter, your husband has been calling continuously. He's at the hospital entrance, demanding immediate access to see you and the baby." Ava tightened her grip on Sophie Grace. "How many times?" "Too many," Claire replied, voice clipped. "Security won't allow him past the lobby. He's becoming agitated. Threats are being made." Ava exhaled slowly. The air seemed heavier now, tense with anticipation. She had survived betrayal, humiliation, abandonment, but the storm outside this room had only begun. She set Sophie Grace carefully in the bassinet, brushing her tiny hair from her forehead. "I'm ready," she murmured. "Let's finish this." Claire stepped into the room, tablet in hand. "I've prepared everything for supervised visitation. Legally, Greg has rights to see his daughter, but under strict limitations. He will not have unsupervised access." Ava nodded. "Good. I don't want him anywhere near her unless someone watches him like a hawk." Minutes later, the sound of frantic footsteps and raised voices drifted down the hall. Greg arrived with his lawyer, desperation leaking from every pore. His suit was wrinkled, tie loose, hair messy. He looked like a man unraveling. "Ava!" he shouted, voice cracking. "You can't keep her from me." She didn't flinch. Sophie Grace stirred in the bassinet, tiny eyes opening to the world for the first time, and for a moment, Greg froze, staring at her. "You left me." Ava's voice cut through the air, calm but piercing. "While I was giving birth. Alone. You abandoned me. And now you think you get to walk in and claim what you ignored." Greg's hands shook as he reached out. Please just let me." "You don't get to claim love when your actions have nothing to do with it," Ava said. Her words were ice against his panic. "You chose her over me. You chose neglect over loyalty. You don't get a redo. If you've ever begged someone to love you and watched them throw you aside, remember this. And if you're tired of watching abusers get away with cruelty, subscribe. This is what accountability looks like." Greg's lawyer stepped forward, clearing his throat nervously. "We're here to arrange visitation per court guidance." Ava cut him off. "Supervised. Every minute. And no access to my finances. No access to any property. Not a single thing." The lawyer hesitated. Greg's eyes pleaded, but Ava's gaze held firm. Outside, Claire coordinated with security. 2 guards at the door. 1 outside the suite. Time-limited visit. Cameras active. No exceptions. Greg swallowed, voice breaking. I made a mistake. I didn't see. You didn't see me as a person, Ava said. And now, you're watching the consequences of that choice unfold. He flinched at the words. They landed like blows he couldn't dodge. A soft whimper from Sophie Grace cut through the tension, tiny and insistent. Greg reached toward her instinctively, then hesitated when a guard gently blocked his path. Ava's eyes softened only for her daughter. This isn't about revenge. It's about safety. And justice. You'll learn what it means to lose the privileges you assumed were yours by default. Greg's face twisted in panic. I can fix this. You can't fix what you broke, Ava said, voice low and resolute. Not me. Not her. Not the years you squandered. Outside the room, Evelyn's voice rang through the hallway, frantic and shrill. Greg. You can't let them do this. Fight back. Ava's lips curved slightly. She's always been desperate to control what isn't hers. Watch how that crumbles now. Greg's hands twitched. He wanted to argue, to insist, to force his way, but every avenue was blocked. Security, Claire, legal documentation, and Ava herself were immovable. A knock at the door interrupted the tense standoff. Claire opened it slightly. Time begins now. Greg stepped in cautiously, every step measured. His eyes never left Sophie Grace. Ava didn't flinch. She didn't move. 15 minutes, Claire said firmly. Then you leave. Greg nodded, swallowing hard. I just want to be part of her life. Ava's gaze hardened. Then understand this. Being part of her life doesn't mean being part of her world when your choices made you unworthy of trust. Actions have consequences. The clock ticked. 15 minutes stretched long and unbearable. Every second reminded Greg of what he had lost, what he had thrown away, and what he might never regain. Ava watched silently, Sophie Grace cooing softly, her tiny hand reaching instinctively for her mother's finger. And in that quiet moment, Greg realized something he couldn't escape. The woman he abandoned was now untouchable. She had rebuilt herself, claimed her power, and she would protect her child with everything she had. As the final minute approached, the tension in the room became almost unbearable. Claire stepped forward, hand on her tablet. Time's up. Greg looked at Ava, eyes desperate. Please. Just a few more minutes. Ava's voice cut through the plea, calm, commanding, and final. No. You had your chance. He turned, defeated, the weight of years of arrogance and neglect pressing down on him like a physical force. The door closed behind him. Silence returned, broken only by Sophie Grace's soft breathing. Ava leaned back, letting the tension slide from her shoulders, and whispered to her daughter, You will never be abandoned. Never underestimated. And you will always know your worth. Outside, Greg's lawyer whispered into his ear, trying to console, trying to salvage. Greg only shook his head, realizing the full scope of what he had lost. And deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. Because some lessons don't arrive gently, they hit like a storm. And Ava Walter was a force he had never, ever reckoned with. If you've ever been dismissed, belittled, or abandoned by someone you trusted, stay close. And if you believe those who hurt others should face the consequences, subscribe. Real strength is watching someone rise from betrayal and claim what's rightfully theirs. The storm was far from over. And the next moves would change everything. The evening settled over the city, orange and gold spilling through the hospital windows, but inside Ava's suite, tension still crackled like static. Sophie Grace slept peacefully, a small, perfect rhythm that belied the chaos outside. Ava sat back, sipping water, feeling the exhaustion settle into her bones, but her mind was sharper than ever. Every betrayal, every insult, every moment Greg and his family had tried to control her life. They had prepared her for this moment. Her phone buzzed again. Claire's name flashed. Ava answered quickly. Mrs. Walter, the foreclosure notice has been officially filed. Evelyn Walter's lawyers are calling non-stop, but the documents are solid. She has 30 days. No extensions. And your husband? Claire paused. He's attempting to reach the press. They're calling him for comment on your ownership of the hospital. Ava let a slow breath out, lips tightening into a thin line. Good. Let him squirm. The door opened abruptly. Security glanced in, tense. Mr. Matthews is here. He's insisting on speaking directly with you, without counsel. Ava's eyes lifted. Her heartbeat quickened, not from fear, but anticipation. He was running out of options, and desperation made people reckless. Greg strode in, flustered, face pale. He tried to straighten his suit, ran a hand through his hair. His eyes were wide, a mixture of panic and disbelief. Ava, he barked. You can't do this. You can't just take everything. Ava didn't flinch. Sophie Grace stirred in the bassinet. Ava glanced down at her daughter, hand instinctively brushing the baby's hair. Everything? She asked softly. I only claimed what was mine by right. What you abandoned me for, you've lost by choice. Greg's jaw tightened. It's not too late. We can fix this. We can be a family. You don't have to. You walked away from me in the worst moment of my life, Ava interrupted. Her voice rose, not in panic, not in pleading, but with steel-hard clarity. While I was giving birth. Alone. And now you think a few tears, a few desperate words, can erase that. If you've ever been betrayed by someone who only sees the consequences after it's too late, pay attention. And if you believe that people like Greg should face accountability, subscribe. This is how power looks when it's finally reclaimed. Greg's shoulders slumped, just slightly, as if he realized that for the first time in years, he had no leverage. His voice lowered, pleading now, more broken than angry. I can be better. I'll do whatever it takes. Let me see her more. Ava shook her head slowly. Supervised visitation. Greg. Every single interaction is monitored. And do not try to manipulate her or me. Ever. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The weight of reality crashed down on him, and she saw it in his eyes. Fear of consequences, regret for choices made, and a dawning realization that the life he assumed he controlled had slipped through his fingers. Then a loud chime rang from Claire's tablet. She glanced at it, eyebrows raised. Mrs. Walter, you might want to see this. Ava took the device. The screen displayed an email from the hospital board. The subject line alone made her heart quicken. Immediate termination and ethics review, Jessica Porter. Ava's lips pressed together. She hadn't asked for vengeance. She had asked for accountability. And the system was finally responding. Greg's face paled as he read over her shoulder. No, she can't, Jessica. She's been loyal to me. Ava's eyes burned into him. Loyalty built on betrayal is worthless. A sudden knock at the door startled both of them. Claire stepped aside to let someone in, a representative from Sinclair Financial Services. They held a stack of papers and a firm, unreadable expression. Mrs. Walter, the representative began. The foreclosure on Evelyn Walter's estate is now enforceable. Unless full payment is made in 30 days, ownership will transfer entirely to Sinclair Holdings. Evelyn's shrill cries echoed faintly from the hallway outside. Greg's lips trembled. He swallowed hard, panic creeping into his features. Ava leaned back in the chair, Sophie Grace in her arms, voice calm but sharp. Do you see now? Cruelty has a cost. Arrogance has consequences. And neglect doesn't get a second chance. Greg's eyes darted to her, pleading. Ava, please. You already made your choice, she said, voice unwavering. Now watch what it costs you. Outside, security tightened. Evelyn screamed once, then twice, before being pulled away. Greg's calls went unanswered. Every attempt to assert control failed. Ava watched quietly, letting the weight of the moment settle. She had endured humiliation, pain, and abandonment. She had survived. And now she was untouchable. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Claire. Board meeting tomorrow. New executive policies will be enacted. All past mismanagement has been reviewed. Immediate operational control rests with you. Ava's lips curved faintly. Her power wasn't just protective, it was transformative. She had reclaimed her life, her dignity, and her child's future. Greg's gaze lingered on her, broken and desperate. He had lost everything that mattered, and the realization burned like ice in his veins. Ava whispered to Sophie Grace, brushing her tiny fingers along the baby's cheek. You will grow knowing strength doesn't wait for permission, and justice doesn't require forgiveness from the undeserving. Claire glanced at her. Shall we prepare the press release? Ava nodded. Let them see everything. The room hummed with quiet authority, the air thick with the tension of those who had underestimated her. Outside, Greg's panic grew, Evelyn's wails echoed, and Jessica's downfall loomed. Ava Walter had survived betrayal. And now, she was rewriting the rules of the world that had once tried to break her. The storm wasn't over. But the next strike would be devastating, and Greg didn't yet understand just how far the consequences would reach. If you've ever been abandoned, belittled, or betrayed, stay close. And if you believe that people who hurt others must face the full weight of their choices, subscribe. Some lessons are unforgettable, and Ava was about to deliver the hardest one of all. The sun had set entirely, leaving the city bathed in the soft glow of streetlights and hospital lamps. Inside Ava's suite, silence hung heavy, yet it was a quiet charged with finality and triumph. Sophie Grace slept soundly in her crib, her small chest rising and falling like a promise, and Ava watched her with a mixture of awe and resolve. The battles of the past weeks, the abandonment, betrayal, humiliation, had forged a new Ava, unshakable, uncompromising, unstoppable. The door opened quietly. Claire entered with a tablet and a folder, her expression unreadable but tense. All legal and operational matters are finalized. The hospital, the assets, and the oversight of Jessica Porter's termination are complete. Everything is now in your hands. Ava nodded slowly, letting the weight of her accomplishments sink in. Every legal maneuver, every strategic move had been calculated, precise, and ruthless in its fairness. No one had broken the rules, except those who thought they could manipulate her. A faint sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. Greg. Ava didn't flinch. The guard outside stiffened, ready, but she raised a hand. This last confrontation was hers, and she would control it entirely. Greg appeared in the doorway, shoulders slumped, eyes haunted. His confidence had evaporated entirely, replaced by panic and regret. Ava, please. I've lost everything. You can't. Ava held up a hand, stopping him before a word could escape. Everything you think you've lost, she said softly, voice steady but cutting, is exactly what your choices created. You abandoned me. You abandoned Sophie. And now, you are witnessing the consequences. He swallowed hard, voice trembling. I can change. I'll do anything. Just, let me be part of her life. Ava's eyes narrowed. Being part of her life doesn't mean erasing the past. You don't get to manipulate or lecture her about loyalty. You don't get to rewrite history. You don't get to pretend you were the protector when you were the betrayer. Outside, the hallway was tense. Evelyn's distant, shrill voice protested, but security kept her away. Greg's lawyer tried to interject, pleading for reason, but Claire's hand on the tablet stopped them. The room belonged entirely to Ava now. Ava leaned closer to Sophie Grace's crib, brushing a tiny strand of hair from her face. She will know love, strength, and integrity. Not manipulation, not abandonment, not arrogance. Greg's lips quivered. Please. I just want a chance. Ava shook her head slowly. You had your chance. You threw it away. And now you'll live with it. The phone buzzed. Claire checked it. The press release went live. Every news outlet has confirmed your ownership, the termination of Jessica Porter, and the legal foreclosure on Evelyn Walters' estate. The world knows who holds the power now. Greg paled, panic spreading across his features. No, they can't. They can, Ava said softly. Because I've made sure of it. You are witnessing the cost of betrayal, neglect, and arrogance. Outside, Evelyn's screaming grew faintly as the guards moved her farther down the corridor. Greg's desperation hung in the room like a tangible force, but Ava remained calm. She had survived, and now she controlled everything. Ava cradled Sophie Grace, whispering, "You will never be powerless. You will always know your worth. And you will never be abandoned by those who should protect you." Greg's shoulders slumped. Every argument, every plea, every attempt to reclaim what he had lost dissolved into the quiet weight of reality. His arrogance, his cruelty, his neglect, they had cost him more than he had ever imagined. Ava's phone buzzed again. Another message from Claire. Custody arrangements finalized. Supervised visitation only. All financial and asset rights are restricted. Your daughter's well-being is fully protected. Nothing further required unless you instruct. Ava let the message sink in. The walls of manipulation, the years of belittlement, the betrayal, it was over. She had survived the worst and emerged stronger, wiser, and untouchable. Her gaze fell on Sophie Grace, and she smiled gently. This is the life we will build together. Free from fear, free from control, and full of strength and love. Outside, Greg turned to leave, defeated, hollowed by the realization of everything he had lost. Evelyn trailed behind, a shadow of the power she had once wielded. Jessica Porter's career was in ruins, her credibility destroyed. Every villain in Ava's story had faced the consequences of their choices. Ava leaned back, letting the tension finally release. Her heart was full, not with vengeance, but with justice and the fierce love she felt for her daughter. If you've ever been abandoned, betrayed, or underestimated, remember this. Strength isn't born from privilege. It's born from survival, from refusing to allow cruelty to define you. And justice isn't about revenge. It's about protecting what matters and standing tall when others would push you down. Subscribe to see stories where power, courage, and resilience triumph, and witness how those who hurt others are finally made to pay. Ava looked at Sophie Grace one last time before closing her eyes, exhaling slowly. The storm had passed, and in its wake, a new life, a life built on dignity, love, and unshakable resolve, was just beginning. This story is a reminder that betrayal and cruelty are temporary, but courage, resilience, and integrity endure. Never let anyone make you feel powerless. Protect your heart, your values, and your loved ones. The ones who underestimate you will always pay the price. If you believe in justice and the strength of survivors, hit subscribe. Because these are the stories that prove, no matter the odds, you can rise, reclaim your power, and build a life where you and your loved ones thrive beyond betrayal.